This is Calm AF, a podcast for humans who are hard on themselves. A podcast for the overthinkers, people pleasers, perfectionists, and overachievers. I'm Kristen Finch, and I'm going to teach you how to quiet that incessant negative chatter in your head. Because you know what a person with a calm mind can do? Anything they want. Grab your coffee, gorgeous soul, because today's the day you get Calm AF. Hello, gorgeous soul. Welcome to Calm AF. So happy to be talking with you today and continuing on in our decluttering series. So I want to remind you that if you like what you hear in today's episode, or really any of the episodes, and you want to take what you're learning and not just hold on to it, but actually implement it, follow through on what you are learning here, you definitely want to join Calm AF Life. We have a very active member portal where people are able to ask me questions directly and get those answers quickly. We have several calls every week where I am sharing the Calm AF methods in different and deeper ways. We have a book club. We have goal-setting workshops every month. We have guest speakers that I am bringing in. I call it cool conversations over coffee because that's always been my goal in life, is to just spend my time having cool conversations over coffee. So I bring in cool people and we talk about cool things like body love and acceptance, human design, feng shui, marriage, neurodiverse relationships. Basically, if this topic is important to you, we will talk about it in the program. And for those of you who, have busy lives, you might have a full-time job, or you just don't have a lot of time to, come to the live calls. Everything is recorded so that you can listen to it later. I was just messaging with someone who is in the program, but is almost never able to come to the live calls. And she was a little concerned about it, but she's like, actually, it's like having 3 or 4 Calm AF episodes a week to listen to, and I'm loving it. So that's super fun. And I really think one of the best parts of this program, the reason why I created it the way I did, is the lifetime access. You join now, you join once, and you get everything, the course, the calls, the coaching, all of it. And you have access to it for life. You can literally join today, get coached today, or you can get coached next week or a year from now. Okay. It is everything I ever imagined and more. I am so in love with it. Click the link in the show notes to get more information, and we'd love to have you there. I would love to meet you. All right. So moving through our Calm AF decluttering series, we are tending to the whole Calm AF system in our decluttering. We're decluttering the bubble, which we talked about last week, decluttering your physical space, the stuff that you interact with energetically regularly, like your home, your car, your workspace. We are going to be talking next week about decluttering the body, specifically around emotions and some of the other things we're consuming. And today we're going to talk about the mind, okay? We're going to talk about all of that clutter that is accumulating in your brain. All of the way your brain feels very full and busy. We're going to talk about decluttering it today because, listen, if you think your drawer has a lot of clutter, just wait until we get into the mind. And I don't say that to freak anyone out. I say that because I think people don't think about clutter as being something you accumulate in your mind. We aren't taught to think of things like thoughts and emotions as things that actually take up space. Okay, but they are. It does take up space, and we'll talk about that. But let's start by doing some math. Okay, my favorite, math. Just kidding. So every day, your brain processes a lot of thoughts. Now, if you Google this, you will get a very wide range of numbers. And they start at around 6,000. That's the low end where what they're studying is that a human thinks about 6,000 thoughts a day, all the way up to 70,000 thoughts a day. My hunch is this depends on the person. It depends on the mood. It depends on the situation they're in, the season of their life, Lots of things probably contribute to this wide range number. For the sake of this episode, though, let's just use a number in the middle, right? Between 6,000 and 70,000, let's use 30,000 thoughts. I want you to think about this for a minute. This is the middle, okay? 30,000 thoughts in a day. And in case you didn't know this, there are 1,440 minutes in a day. So 1,440 minutes in a day, 30,000 thoughts. All right, let that settle in for a second. Now, technically, thoughts aren't taking up physical space in your brain. You can't hold a thought in your hand, but I want you to think of it more energetically. And think of the sayings that we say so easily, right? Oh, I feel like I'm carrying such a heavy load, or I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders. You don't have literal weight on your shoulders when you are worried or when you're stressed, but it sure feels like it. There's a reason why those sayings are what they are. Because energetically, the feelings and the thoughts and the fears and everything are taking up a shit ton of energetic space. Now, if I were to ask you how many of those 30,000 thoughts in a day are you aware of? Are you actually actively thinking? Okay, how many would you guess? Well, according to the National Science Foundation, about 95% of your thoughts are automatic thoughts, meaning they're happening without your awareness and without any effort on your part. 95% of your thoughts are happening without your awareness. Okay, so 95% of 30,000 is 28,500. So 28,500 thoughts just running amok, unattended, unsupervised in your brain. 28,000. Okay, so let's talk about quickly, how does a thought become automatic? That is through repetitions. So thoughts that you think often, repetitively, create those strong neural pathways. And when you have a strong neural pathway, they don't require any effort to use. And not all of these are bad, okay? Like when we're talking about automatic thoughts, not all 28,500 of them are like, oh my God, these are harmful thoughts. Most of these neural pathways are created when we're children, and many of them are a result of learning skills that we will use that we don't need to think about. So you don't have to think anymore about how to brush your teeth. You just automatically know the steps. You don't have to actively think about how to tie your shoes. You don't have to actively think about how to read a book anymore. These things are automatic now. So not all 28,000, but let's be fair and say half, let's even say 3/4 of those automatic thoughts are purposeful in your daily routines. Okay, so that these are things that you want. These are the automatic thoughts that you want. Brushing your teeth, reading a book, those things. So that leaves about 7,000 thoughts left over. 7,000 automatic thoughts that aren't really serving a purpose in your daily life, that are just running around, dictating how you feel, making a mess, cluttering up the joint, deciding what you do, deciding what you don't do, deciding how you are showing up for your life. Okay, 7,000 thoughts that are just roaming through your subconscious, making decisions for you. Okay, I think you can see it's not the best use of your brain space. But for today's episode, this isn't actually where I suggest you start with that mental decluttering. Not because those automatic thoughts, those 7,000 thoughts, aren't important to declutter. They are. These are those stories and beliefs that you really want to unlearn. But I believe that those are the thoughts that you declutter with help, with a support person, a therapist, or a coach, for the same reasons why hoarders need professional help going through their spaces. The same is true for us going through our old stories and beliefs. We need help to see why thoughts that feel so very true aren't true. That is an important part of the mental decluttering process, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. Today, I want to give you some actions that you can do on your own to get that mental decluttering ball rolling by putting your attention on those active thoughts. Okay, so we just talked about the subconscious thoughts, those automatic thoughts. Now we're going to put our attention on the active thoughts. So let's do some more math. If you are thinking 30,000 thoughts in a day and 95% of those are automatic, that means you are mindfully, actively thinking about 1,500 thoughts a day. Okay, we're kind of back to a more reasonable number, about one thought a minute-ish. Now, I want you to stop for a minute and really think about your thoughts that you have on a daily basis. What are you thinking about on an average day? How many of your thoughts are useful, purposeful, loving, right? The same questions that we filter through with physical clutter. Would you buy it again? Would you choose it again? How many of your thoughts that you are actively thinking in a day are you trying to hold on to something so you don't forget it? How many of the thoughts that you are thinking in a day are about things you need to do, things on your to-do list, things that you should do? How many of the active thoughts you are having are about things you need to do, but you're afraid to do, or you are procrastinating on? How many of your active thoughts create the feeling of overwhelm or confusion, either causing you to spin out or shut down? Think about that. Your normal thoughts in a normal day, what are they comprised of? And here's the question I want to ask that I really think is important to understand. How many of those 1,500 active thoughts you are thinking in a normal day are empowering? How many of them are supportive of doing things so that you create a feeling of how you want to feel in your life? How many of those 1,500 thoughts are moving you towards the life you want to live? Not just going through the motions, but empowering and actively moving you towards what you want. If we're being honest, for most of us, not a lot of those 1,500 thoughts are empowering. Okay, and the reason being, there's not space for that. There's no room for that. There's so much other clutter taking up the space that we don't have room for the empowering thoughts. Most of us are using our active thoughts to worry, to problem solve for problems that haven't happened yet, to come up with ways to make sure people aren't thinking bad things about us. We're spending our active thoughts ruminating over a conversation you had earlier, thinking about that thing you did a week ago that you're still thinking about, trying to figure out how to change who you are so that you can finally feel worthy, or at least a little better. Now, I'm being a bit dramatic here. Not all of your 1,500 thoughts are gloom and doom thoughts, but the reason why it's important to zoom out and observe this is because if all of your headspace is taken up with those thoughts, with anxiety, with disempowering thoughts, there's less room for empowering thinking. There's less time, less space for you to focus on thoughts that will move you towards your future Calm AF life. This is why we start here, to create space for more of what we want. Instead of less, we are creating more. Okay, so let's get into the tools. The first decluttering tool is the brain dump. Okay, the brain dump is a type of journaling. I encourage you to incorporate this as a daily, if possible, or very consistent habit, just like the physical decluttering habit, right? We want to have this be something that we are tending to consistently, if not daily. And you're going to pick, just like the physical decluttering, you're going to pick a doable amount of time to allot to this practice each day. And I suggest 5 to 10 minutes. That's it. Same with the physical decluttering. We are not going to try and be a weekend warrior and declutter all of our mental declutter and declutter all of our mental shit. We are doing this in tiny little chunks. So you're going to set the timer and you're going to take a notebook and you're just going to dump your thoughts out of your head and onto this piece of paper. You can think of this as the equivalent to taking all of the stuff out of the drawer and putting it on the counter when you're decluttering a drawer. You're taking it out to see what's there, and you're deciding what in there is clutter and what's not, what gets to go back in the drawer and what needs to be tossed. So you're going to dump your thoughts on the paper to see what's in there. And then you're going to go through those thoughts and you're going to trash the ones that aren't true, that aren't loving, that aren't moving you towards what you want, that you wouldn't say to a 6-year-old. Okay, I often use this, like, would you say this to a 6-year-old? Why not? That means it's just not helpful. It's not loving. You're just going to cross those thoughts out. They are clutter thoughts. They don't get to go back in your head. Now, I know your next question is like, well, how? But it is still in my head. I just want you to trust me here. I promise that just the act of doing this is going to start increasing your awareness of what thoughts you are having. And when you do that, you will be increasing the awareness of when you are believing your shitty clutter thoughts. Okay, we're increasing the awareness. This is going to change things that you wouldn't be changing without the awareness. Okay? The next steps of the brain dump would be to take those thoughts through the rewire process. And that is the part I recommend you do with support, with a therapist or in Calm AF Life. Okay? All right, so that's the first tool, the brain dump. Another big source of mental clutter, like I mentioned, is all the shit you're trying to remember. You are spending so much energy trying to remember things. And in order to decrease this mental load, I suggest you get a cheap tabbed notebook. And every time you're like, oh, I need to remember this. Oh, I hope I don't forget this. Instead of keeping it in your brain, write it in the notebook. Okay, so the reason why I say tabbed is because I think it's nice to have it, you can section it out. Like one section can be for random daily reminders, call the dentist, get the oil change, send the tax stuff to the accountant. Another can be for projects that you really want to get to someday, but you don't have time for in that moment that you're thinking about it, right? And then when you do have the time, you have completely forgotten that you wanted to do it. So you write it down in this section of the notebook. Really, this is the place for you to put things on paper so you don't need to hold them in your brain. You don't need to clutter up your brain with things that you want to remember but are afraid to not remember. Okay, so that's the second one, having that tabbed notebook where you just take the things that you are trying, all of that clutter of trying to remember, and you put it in there. Next, how much of your day do you spend thinking about how you should spend your day, right? You get up in the morning, you've got all these things to do, and you spend so much time thinking about, well, when am I going to do it? When should I do it? How should I do it? What do I need to do? Okay, this is where my tool of time blocking comes in, and I have a very specific way of teaching it. This is one of the only tools that I really kind of hold close to my chest because it can be so easily used against yourself. Time blocking is essentially a productivity tool. You definitely will be more productive in your days when you are using this Calm AF time blocking, but what people try and do with productivity tools is try and increase how many things they get done in a day. And that, I just refuse to be a participant in that bullshit narrative. And this is why I only teach it inside my programs or to my clients. In Calm AF Life, we've got our time blocking workshop coming up in a week or two. And I know everyone's looking forward to that. But essentially, time blocking is assigning times to your to-do list ahead of time so that you can see what is actually possible to get done in a day. You can take things off your to-do list that just cannot fit in a day so you don't get to the end of the day like, oh, I should have had time for that when you didn't. And first thing we always do in this version of time blocking is make sure that you have a spot on that time blocking schedule. Okay? Again, this time blocking tool is used to decrease the amount of active thoughts you're trying to keep track of so that you can clear space for thoughts you want to think, empowering thoughts, things that you want to start believing. And let's wrap up with this. This is a way for you to reduce the amount of clutter you are bringing in drastically. You just need to stop over-consuming. Just in the same way, if you want to not keep reaccumulating clutter, you have to stop buying things. For mental clutter, you need to start being more discerning about the information you are taking in, whether it's through social media, through books, through podcasts, whatever. You want to run everything through the filter, the Calm AF filter. Especially am I using it? Okay. So whenever you hear something on a podcast or you read something in a book that you're like, oh, I should do that, or I need to figure out how to make that happen or whatever, and you're actually not doing it, then it's just mental clutter. It's taking up space in your mind. Okay. So you can declutter the info you're consuming by being super honest about whether or not you're going to use this, or is it just going to sit in my brain taking up energetic space? And if it's something that you do think you want to do at some point, that's where you have that notebook. Put it in your notebook. Like, hey, go back and listen to this episode about being more productive, or, how to do laundry better, whatever it is. One of the biggest space sucks in your brain is the shoulds. I should do this. I should do that. And consumption of social media or podcasts or books is the biggest culprit of the shoulds. We are always comparing ourselves and judging ourselves on what we are seeing other people doing. That's just a simple way to decrease the amount of clutter, is to stop over-consuming. All right. Simple, right? Easy peasy ways to start decluttering your mind today. So simple. You got this. As always, if you want to go further, join Calm AF Life. The link is in the show notes. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I love you so much. I will see you next week. If you love this podcast, you will love Calm AF Life. It's a self-paced, lifetime access DIY course that teaches you all the concepts that I talk about here, from nervous system regulation to manifesting with ease. And since we know that true change doesn't happen just because you know what to do, you also get an all-access pass to coaching calls and accountability so you don't stay stuck and you don't give up. The best investment you could ever make is in yourself. Calm AF Life is here for you now. Life's not waiting. Let's get you aligned with your Calm AF self, gorgeous soul. I cannot wait to meet you. Go to KristenFinch.com and join me today.